Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with part 13, Evidence of the Secret Doctrine, from the Lost Word, Its Hidden Meaning, by George H. Steinmetz. Chapter 12, Evidence of the Secret Doctrine. In a preceding chapter it is stated, it is our hope to prove that the condition of awareness which we are investigating may likewise be defined as possession of the Master's Word. It may be as well to here boldly state our premise and then present those data which seem to us persuasive of such conclusion. It is our studied opinion that the objective of Freemasonry is the acquisition of spiritual cognition, that possession of the Master's Word is but another of the synonymous words or phrases for cosmic consciousness. Let us digress for the moment and investigate the soundness of the theory that there is a mystic element in Freemasonry, to discover if we are wishfully reading into the texts of Masonic philosophy something which actually does not exist, or if we may find authority for the statement. We learned of the difficulties encountered by the Committee of Masonic Information of the Grand Lodge of California in determining just what information Grand Lodge intended them to promulgate. See page 10. It is not from any desire to be contentious that we dissent with those who claim that all of Masonry is in the ritual. We are thoroughly conversant with all the arguments advanced by that school of Masonic thought. But if they are correct, if it be true that all of Masonry is in the ritual, what has Masonry to offer the initiate? In fact, why does it exist? To teach a few moral lessons which would seem to be more within the province of the church, and in which in actual practice are there given greater emphasis and, quite frankly, are better taught, to perpetuate an absurd allegory, if it not have no meaning beyond the ritualistic explanation, which in itself contradicts the accounts found in the same Bible which ritual proclaims to be the great light of Freemasonry. Fortunately for the seeker of the light, as well as the Masonic order, we need not accept this dismal outlook, for we can turn to numerous Masonic authorities who will verify our thesis of a secret doctrine in Freemasonry, which far transcends its moral and ethical teachings. These are then seen in their true light, byproducts of the real objective, preparatory steps to put one in that proper position, both physical and psychical, to be ready for the acceptance of the real doctrine and teaching of Freemasonry. It is an old precept of occult philosophy that one must attain a high moral and ethical level before he can hope for spiritual progress, and that uprightness, far from being the end sought, is but a means to that end. He who would become an accomplished Mason must not be content merely to hear, or even to understand the lectures. He must, aided by them, and they, having, as it were, marked out the way for him, study, interpret, and develop those symbols for himself. It has been objected to us that in our lectures we undervalue that which is absurdly called symbolic Masonry, as if any Masonry could be not symbolic. It is quite true that we should not value it if we saw nothing in the symbols of the Blue Lodge beyond the imbecile pretenses of interpretation of them contained in the ordinary sterile instructions which we owe to Webb and his predecessors. These misinterpretations are not so much guesses at the true meaning as merely arbitrary and unwarranted explanations. invented with but a modern degree of ingenuity, and no more authoritative or genius than any others that an ingenious fancy might invent today. In the last and best resource, the important matter is not as to measures of original meaning, but as to what it may be possible by a process of ordered reason to induce on our own part, so that Masonry, for us at least, may have the freedom of a world of validity, not of pretense or seeming. It is again fortunate from this point of view that the old symbolists who gave us the things which they classified as veils of allegory in the imagery of the higher grades left, as I have said, no key to their real meaning. The reason is that their personal understanding, supposing it to have emerged clearly, would no doubt have been of consequence in their own day, but without appeal in ours, and yet we should be bound thereto. As it is, the field is free before us within the measures offered by the veils, their metaphysical matter and texture. The dead school of Masonry will continue while it lasts to affirm that there is nothing beyond them, but the dead school will pass and give place to a living Masonry, which is already in the world and is breathing its own spirit into the outward forms. It is like Matthew Arnold's heap of letters, put into our hands to make of it what word we will. And there is a very true sense in which we may suspect with him that we have not yet drawn out of the varied elements the truest and highest message. It, being the quest for mysticism, is the work which a man performs in his own heart and soul by the experimental science of love, raised to an ineffable degree and applied to divine nature for the attainment of the soul's destiny. And this is its end in God. The word is union. This is the state in which man sees his soul uplifted by eternal spirit, and I testify on the faith of the masters that I am speaking of no glorious dream, but of that which, under God, is possible here and now, even as it was attained of old. It is a mastery of spiritual building for those who know the builder, and he is God within them. The master builder is at work on the temple of God and man, a holy house of doctrine based on experience, and the building of a sanctuary within. The secret hereof is the imminent presence of God and the realization of that presence. The degrees of initiation are but the degrees of the evolution of the God in man. Illumination being that degree in which the divine self masters and enkindles its manifestation, the personality, which is henceforth subservient to its evolution. At the moment of illumination, man becomes, in truth, a son of God, having claimed and made his own divine and natural birthright. Initiation and illumination are the destiny of the race. No man knows the secret doctrine until it has become the secret of his soul, the reigning reality of his thought, the inspiration of his acts, the form and color and glory of his life. No more should be needed to establish that there is more to Masonry than the ritual, and we can turn to the ritual itself for corroboration of this view. You are about to receive all the light which can be conferred upon you in a lodge of Master Masons. This quotation may not be familiar to all readers, as it is not encountered in some jurisdictions. This is regrettable, as it is very enlightening to the serious student of Masonry. Where else may it be obtained? Outside the lodge itself, i.e., outside the ritual of the lodge, and behind the veil of allegory. We purposely chose Pike and Waite to substantiate this claim. Pike because of his erudition and his protest, even in his day, at the puerility of the lectures and explanations of the symbols of Masonry. Waite because of his more modern writing and viewpoint, and his intuitive insistence that he is speaking of no glorious dream, but of that which, under God, is possible here and now, even as it was attained of old. In view of these assertions that Masonry extended far beyond the mere moral and ethical teachings encountered in the ritual, let us, like Brother Waite, leave the dead school of Masonry, which would circumscribe and limit its sublime philosophy to a faulty ritual. Let us, too, press onward to that living Masonry which is already in the world and is breathing its own spirit into outward forms. May it please the Supreme Architect to use us as humble instruments to, in some small measure, further the designs on the trestle board and assist in pointing the way to that living Masonry. But enough of authorities and arguments with the imaginary proponents of the dead school. Truth needs no vindication. Let us turn to the ritual itself and there discover in the rubbish of the lectures on the body of the dead his jewel of office. The plum cannot long remain in a horizontal position. It must return to the perpendicular. There is a progressive vein of evidence running throughout the 3 degrees of Masonry, which, when assayed, reveals a rich content that points to the fact that cosmic consciousness, or the same thing by another name, is the reason for and the accumulation of the Masonic quest. Comparing the 3 types of consciousness, simple, self, and cosmic, we discern a relationship between them and the degrees of entered apprentice, fellow craft, and master. Indisputably, the first degree deals with the material or physical. Simple consciousness is of this quality. We have no evidence that even the higher animals possessed only of simple consciousness think as we interpret the word. They are actuated by what we call instinct, and even in those cases where they appear to reason, it is on a low plane compared with the self-conscious reasoning ability of man. Simple consciousness is not a thinking, analytical consciousness. It is stimulated by the senses and is confined to the supervision of the physical well-being of the individual. It is a consciousness of the physical body and its surroundings, but not a clear consciousness of other entities to the extent of discernment between me and you. The cyclical degree is that of fellow craft. It depicts man evolved from the animal, cyclical state of simple consciousness. The thinking individual arrived at the level where he can rationalize and discern his relationship to his environment and his fellow man, a level at which he is capable of abstract reasoning, where the imagination comes into play and he can conceive of still higher levels yet to be obtained. Man throughout the ages has been asking himself 3 questions, using the same 4 words to frame his inquiry. Why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I here? What is there within him which prompts the asking? Why has he been intrigued by the very thought of a powerful word whereby he might gain the knowledge to answer his eternal questions? True, a few mechanists and self-labeled atheists have scoffed at the idea, but they represent a minute minority through the ages, compared with the brilliant minds who have held a belief in some kind of deity and some kind of immortality of the human entity. Possibly the best proof of the verity of these 2 facts is the persistence of the concept throughout the ages, the fact that the hope and faith have remained despite all attempts to eradicate them. In the third degree, we see the analogy of the self-conscious individual arrived at the intellectual certainty that his newly acquired self-consciousness is not the ultimate goal, and that he is capable of achieving still higher levels, which reason and nature inform him exist. Here starts the quest, born of dissatisfaction with the status quo, urged on by an intense desire, so longing to attain the higher plane, that plane which is the true destiny of the race, an obscure allusion to the final achievement of spiritual consciousness is discovered in the ritual, but its significance is rarely recognized. This allusion supports our explanation of the first and second degrees. The portion to which we refer is in the Master's lecture of the third degree, explaining the composition of the lodges of entered apprentices, fellow crafts, and Master Masons. A lodge of entered apprentices is said to consist of 7, 3 masters and 4 apprentices. A lodge of fellow crafts consists of 5, 3 masters and 2 fellow crafts. A lodge of Master Masons consists of 3, all masters. I am fully conversant with the fact that a number of grand jurisdictions make a different division of these lodges, i.e., 1 Master Mason and 6 apprentices, 2 Master Masons and 3 fellow crafts, and, of course, 3 Master Masons in the Master Masons Lodge. This is contradictory of the opening ritual in each degree, used in most American jurisdictions, wherein the composition of each lodge is recited. When but 7 a lodge of entered apprentices is said to consist of the worshipful master, senior and junior wardens, etc. A lodge of fellow crafts, when but 5, is likewise said to consist of the worshipful master, senior and junior wardens, etc. If this be true, each lodge of necessity includes 3 Master Masons, inasmuch as neither 2 of the apprentices in the first instance, nor 2 of the fellow crafts in the second, could serve as wardens. Mason law demands that a warden of a lodge be a Master Mason. Fortunately for the purity of the ritual, the older version, which is quoted above, is still in use in a number of jurisdictions. On reflection, it is seen that this is the logical division and the only one which lends itself to rational interpretation and maintain consistency with the opening ritual. To better understand this symbology, turn to page 41 and review the explanation of the sevenfold man composed of 4 material and 3 spiritual bodies. Can we be credulous enough to consider this merely a coincidence? The apprentice lodge is the complete man, consisting of 7 bodies, 3 spiritual, being the 3 Master Masons, and 4 material bodies, being the 4 apprentices. The fellow craft lodge represents the psychical or mental man. He needs no material or etheric body, hence consists of but 5 bodies. The 3 spiritual bodies, again the 3 Master Masons, and the desire or emotional body and the mental body, these being the 2 fellow crafts. Quite obviously, the Lodge of Master Masons consists of but 3, the 3 spiritual bodies, finally separated from all the material bodies. This can only be symbolic of the spiritual man. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.